full name is Patricia Beno. I was born December the 31st, 1935. I was born in Port Arthur at the St. Joseph's Hospital, and a week later I was living in Schreiber, where I still live. My mother's mother was born in Quebec, and my grandfather on my mother's side was born in Port Arthur. On my father's side, my grandmother was born in Schreiber, and my grandfather was born in Germany. I was married on June the 27th, 1959, and my husband's name is Donald George Beno. I met Don in Schreiber, but before that he had just come up from Toronto. He had never been in the north before, and he was hired by Spadoni Brothers to come up as a watch inspector for the people that had the watches, or the railroaders that had their watches had to be on time all the time, so that was his job. And that's how he got to Schreiber. He was 21 years old, and I had just started working in the bank in Montreal. And he'd come to the bank, opening an account, and I met him there. And then I went out with him a few times, and we seemed to get along really well, and 3-4 years later we married, yes. We have one child, Michael John Beno. He is 45 years old, and he is our only child. And we don't have any grandchildren, but we have a grandparent. Michael came home from school one time with a parrot 25 years ago, and we still have him, so he's our grandparent. Yes, I had a few occupations. When I was 12 years old, the theater was built right across from where I lived, and I had the job of being the popcorn girl, the usher, and then finally the cashier. And I did that job every day, twice on Saturdays and a Sunday night, every day for 2 years. And I just loved what I did. And after that, a few years later, I was employed by the Bank of Montreal, and I worked there for 13 years. And I just loved my job, but my husband was getting tired of me coming home late all the time, so I quit. And after about 2 years, I had our son, Michael. And then after Michael started to go to school, I went into the insurance business and worked with my husband, and we were in the business for 42 years. The business was, my husband was a general insurance broker, and we sold fire insurance and home insurance. We sold auto insurance, and my husband sold life insurance. And we worked very hard, and we did very well. And the name of the business was Beno Insurance. I volunteered as I curled, and I was the treasurer of the Ladies Curling Club for 20 years. I also was a member of the Catholic Women's League, and I was treasurer there for a couple of years. And I also volunteered in Rossport with the St. John Birchman's Church. The ladies had an annual fish dinner, and my husband and I did that for 10 years. Yes. My favorite memories of growing up in Schreiber, I guess that would be knowing my great-grandmother, who lived next door, and her name was, well, we called her Grandma Riley, that's what her name was. And my grandparents, Victoria and Robert Winters, they were my mentors. I lived next door, and they had me all the time doing different things. I had a wonderful life with them. And I guess I can remember going down to Terrace Beach, which would be called Terrace Bay at that time, and my grandmother would make ice cream. And this was in the middle of the summer. Well, my grandfather had a little building behind the camp, and it was filled with ice, and it was covered with sawdust. The ice was covered with sawdust, and that's how they would make the ice cream. They'd take the ice cream and put it in this little garage, and we'd have ice cream. And how he had got the ice was in the winter time, he'd snowshoe down there and cut the ice out of the lake and put it in this building. So we had ice all summer. I had a wonderful aunt, Frida Dugan, and her and Uncle Con took me everywhere. And one of the places that I can recall, and I was around 4 years old, was to the station to see the Queen and the King. And that, I guess, would have been in 1939. And Betty Riley, my second cousin, she gave the Queen the flowers. And I remember that. And that was, like I say, when I was 4 years old. And I never really, it's just vaguely I remember. And I also remember my grandmother, she used to have the Women's Institute. And she would have these meetings at her house, and they used to dress me up in a little Scotch suit. And I was very shy. And I'd have to do this special dance for them. And they did, I mean, every time she had a meeting, I had to be there to dance. Oh, yes, my grandmother was a great lady. She lived not too far from the public school. And Mr. Irma was our principal at that time. And he was looking for money to raise for the Red Cross. So I had told my grandmother that. She says, well, you know, I can have bingos at the house. So we started having bingos once a week. And of course, Schreiber's a bingo town. Everybody played bingo in Schreiber. So she'd have all these people come in every week, and even kids came to play bingo. And she'd serve coffee and tea biscuits, and that was her donation. And she did that for quite a while. And we made quite a bit of money, the Red Cross. Then the Anglican Church, they wanted to rug the floor in their church. So she decided to put on bingos too. So she raised money, I think she raised $1,500, enough money to rug the Anglican Church. My dad was an engineer on the railroad, and I had 2 aunts in Jackfish. And every summer I would go down there for maybe a month and spend 2 weeks with one and 2 weeks with the other. And I had no way of getting there, knowing Jackfish. There was no way you could get to Jackfish unless you took the train. So my dad got in touch with another engineer, and he put me on the engine. And I went to Jackfish, it's 14 miles, on the engine. And I was like 8 years old. And anyway, my aunt lived about a mile from the station in Jackfish. So with that, the train would come, the train came and dropped me off, stopped the train and dropped me off at my aunt's house. And she was just down the road in this little cabin that she lived in. So I got there okay, and that was fine. And then every week, I knew my mother was going to send me something. So the train, I would listen, because we were right so close to the tracks. I would listen, and when it tooted to go around a corner, I would run out. And the engineer would drop me off a present. And sometimes it could be cookies, and then maybe film for my camera. And I look forward to that. Yeah, I remember that quite well. And then I had, that was my Auntie Monica, and I spent like the 2 weeks with her, and they were just great memories. And then I would spend the time with my other Auntie Irene, and I remember also when I was down there that they had these Sunday like lunches and like a picnic, and we'd go to Pebble Beach. The whole town would go. Everyone in the town walked on the railroad tracks to Pebble Beach. There's nobody had any hide or anything. It was just, and I remember we would walk back about midnight along the tracks. And I remember this one night we walked back. I'd never seen lightning like it. It was the whole sky lit up. We didn't need a light or anything, all the way back to Jackfish. Yeah, that was a good memory. I have nice pictures of all the people that attended this every week thing on Sundays. Oh, they've changed since I was a child. I guess in the town of Schreiber, well, the turntable was taken out. Car barns were gone. The people that did the work up in the stations, the telegraphers, they were all transferred somewhere else. And I guess that's why Schreiber went from 2,500 probably to 1,000 maybe, I'm not sure, but I think that had a lot to do with it. Yeah, well, years ago, we didn't have a television, or we didn't have computers. and everything we did was outside, and that's just the way we had to live, with the outdoors, and, with skating in Schreiber, I skated, skied, snowshoed, everything. It didn't cost us a cent. I have one really that I really enjoy, and it's a vegetable garden. And this year it's really, really nice, just a beautiful garden. And I've always had a garden. I've been married for 55 years, and I've had a garden ever since then. And I just love the earth. I love the feel of the soil. I love to watch it grow. I love to take it, eat what's in it, and I like to take it in, and devour it, and look forward to the next year. And I did that even when I was single. My mom and dad had a garden, but my dad would dig it for me, and then I would plant it. But they weren't really interested in gardening, but I was, and I still love it. Yes. My husband and I, we've been over to Europe, been to France, been to Italy, been to Spain, Portugal. We've also been to Greece. I've done all the Greek islands. The last number of years, we've spent time in Florida. We used to go to Fort Myers Beach for many years. Actually, we first started going to Clearwater when Mike was 3, and that's where he learned to swim. And then after 10 years, we thought we should go somewhere else, so we had to leave Mike at home because he had to go to school. And then we went down to Fort Myers Beach, and we were there for maybe 20 years in the winter. But sometimes we go for 3 weeks, sometimes we go, just when we're still working. But once we're retired, we would go longer. And then after that, when we retired, we started golfing. And we'd never golfed before. And we took up golfing, and we've been golfing ever since. And all we do is golf, and we just love it. And hopefully this winter, we'll be able to go down and spend a couple of months at a place called Sebring. It's not where it's not on the ocean, it's central Florida. And there's about 12 golf courses. And you can drive within maybe half an hour to each one of them. And that's what we've chosen to do, and we just love it. My grandfather built a road from Schreiber down to his camp, which would be his camp eventually. He built it by pick and shovel by himself, and it's a 9-mile road. And that's a story that they've told about how he did that, and then while he was down there, he built another road in a place called Crooked Creek, and it's a little place where you can go fishing. He built a little cabin there, and my grandmother, I was with them, we'd go down there fishing, and my grandmother was a great fisherman, and we'd fish in the creek, and then we'd have lunch in this little building, and then that's sort of a life thing. And then we spent like all our summers. There was always a family there. We had a lot of family, and every summer all the kids would have to. That's where we would go. If I didn't go to Jackfish, I was down at Terrace Bay with all the family and that. And then after my grandfather retired, and it was in the wintertime, he would drive. By this time, the highway was in, and he would drive to where we turn off to go down from Highway 17 down to, it's like a terrace, and he would start digging a path, just the width of himself, and every day he'd go down, and my grandmother would give him a lunch, and he would make this path all the way, eventually, to the camp. It took him like a long time, but it was to get spring early, and every day he'd come down, and he would do so many feet, I guess, of doing this. So then eventually he would be down to the camp really early because the snow would melt a bit, and like he did that, and that's quite a thing. At his age, like he would have been he would have been 65 anyway, but he was a hard-working man, and he just did all these wonderful things. Yeah. All I know about Duke is what my mother told me. My mother was the youngest of, I think, 8 children, and I've seen pictures of my mother with Duke. I think you have the picture. And my mother just told me that she had this medal that was on Duke's collar, and he had died, and someone in the YMCA had given it to my mom, and she has kept it. And I really never seen it for many, like, I never really seen it for many years, and one time she showed it to me, so I knew she had it, but she never talked about much because, like I was born in 35, and my grandfather died at, I was 2 years old when he died, so I didn't even know him, but he lived in Jackfish, and I guess he was the one that had the dog, and after he died, the dog moved into Schreiber because the dog would walk from Jackfish to Schreiber all the time, and that's when he found this chap at Blue Jay on the tracks. And the train was coming, and he stopped the train, and that was what the medal was for, because he saved this man's life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. My grandfather, I have pictures of my grandfather, and he had many dogs, and they were all huge dogs, but he was also a sleigh dog. And, you know, I guess my grandfather was a prospector too, and he had built the hotel in Jackfish, and that's where all my mother's family, they all lived, and they're just one big family, that many people, yeah. But like I was too young to be, but like I say, if my mother hadn't have told me and showed me the medal, I knew it was there. And then when I asked my dad if I you know, that I'd like to have it, and he wasn't feeling that well, and I knew that, you know, in time he would have passed on, and so I asked him if I could have it, and he gave it to me, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with it? And then I talked to my husband about it, and I said, you know, what good is it, Don? Like, Michael doesn't know anything about it, and I just know a little bit about it. I'll phone the library and see if they're interested, and I guess that's how it sort of started. Like I say, the dog lived in the YMCA, and apparently there was a plaque on the wall too, that, I don't know, it just disappeared. I guess, you know, people forget about it, but I've read in the brochure that I gave you there that they had found, there was a plaque on the wall too, in memory of Duke, but I don't know what happened to it. Yeah. Schreiber was very good to me. I worked here for many years, with the public for many years. Our son is a 5th generation of Schreiber, which is nice to remember. And it's been always home to me, no matter where I've gone. I always want to come back home, and I've, you know, traveled a lot and seen a lot, and it's just as beautiful here as anywhere else.